Listeners, welcome back to LIP, the Lost in Postulation podcast. I'm Nicola Volpi, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, also known as Harvey Wilson, coming in on a night train to record this, Neil Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, you see, this is what happens when you get too worked up about movies and you just start dropping names of movies without a care in the world.
And rewriting them.
Yeah, the eagle-eyed listener will have noticed there was a paragraph towards the bottom of the last episode, which was just a mountain of corrections, most of which were needed for my sake.
Co-creation.
I have to apologize. I'm going to keep myself on a shorter leash this time. I'm going to take fewer punts on the names of things, people, facts, you name it. And keep this ship a little bit more under control than last week.
But that's a funny part, of the journey that I've noticed while we've been podcasting. We're very sharp at catching things in the beginning. I think we're quite sharp throughout in terms of like what we're bringing. But there is this point, like halfway through a big segment, where we're kind of just in this zone, and where you can say Harvey Wilson instead of Charlie Wilson.
Charlie Wilson. Just to be clear. It is shocking, actually, yeah. And you can be 100% sure of something in the moment, and then 5 seconds pass, and you're like, oh my God, that's totally wrong. And then the moment is gone, and we're on to something else. So,
Daniel Kaluuya, best lead actor.
Best supporting. Sorry again. I did make a severe number of mistakes. Just shows what little I know about the Oscars, really. But here we are, all the same. We're back once again.
And it did reinforce our narrative, actually, the correction that when you're below 40, you're basically not allowed to win Best Lead Actor.
You should pretty much need to come back and try again in 10 years' time. That seems to be the rule, yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
There we are. So we're here today. We got a fun one lined up for you guys. It kind of came together in a bit of a hectic fashion. But we managed to find a red thread through the topics. But before that, we're going to lead with our mundane postulation.
Indeed we are. And it's one that's really on the top of everyone's mind these days. We're talking right now about holidays. And the reason for that is, first and foremost, here we are at the end of March, and everyone is starting to look a bit forward now to the summer holidays, to what they've got planned. Let's not get into our own plans necessarily. That's not what we're here to talk about. But what I am here to ask you about, Nicola, is your preferences with regard to holidays, because this can actually be a quite divisive topic, even leading in some cases to the end of relationships. If some couples are like severely apart on this, it's like a deal breaker that they never get past. But what I'm going to ask you first and foremost is one of the classic dichotomies of holidays. And I'm talking, of course, about the beach holiday versus the city holiday. Now, and to clarify, both equal durations. Let's say it can be a week and a week, or it can be 2 weeks and 2 weeks. But what I want to know is, for you, which of those two is better?
It's a tough one. And it is a very different type of holiday. For me, it's not just a preference thing. It's also one where we're divided within the household at times, me and Maria. So one is more restorative, regenerative in a way, like if you're taking the beach holiday pure and simple, just lying on the beach, reading your book, getting your energies back, napping in the sun. Whereas the city trip, let's say, especially if you're going to a new city you haven't been before, can be more, what's the word, enriching. From a cultural perspective or whatever. You come away, having learned more about something else, about another culture or whatever, whereas maybe the beach holiday, you're coming away, having gotten in touch with your deeper self.
But this is what I'm wondering, right? I wish I was one of those people who can do that. And it sounds like you're lucky enough that you can come away from a beach holiday and actually have felt that you spent your time well, right?
There's a time limit, though, for me.
For sure. For anyone, I'm sure there is as well. But the issue I have, and the reason I can't understand beach holidays to any extent really, is that pretty much from day one of a beach holiday, I'm suffering, basically, or at least
you're restless.
I'm both physically and mentally suffering. Physically, because I burn instantly, unfortunately, my terribly Irish skin.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that.
You have, firsthand. And then the issue is no amount of factor 50 is kind of enough. It's sooner or later it's going to either miss a spot or it's going to wear off.
Yeah.
So it's basically a stressful time altogether. But then on top of that, it just feels tragically unproductive for me. And I don't know. I'm not like a workaholic. I'm definitely not like someone who just like works weekends and evenings, compulsively.
Right.
I'm definitely not. But for me, if I'm going to take the time off work and going to get out of the country and go somewhere else, it better well be somewhere new, somewhere like interesting that I can actually like see new parts of the world, basically. So that for me, the beach holiday then just suffers massively in my enjoyment, and I find myself resenting almost every moment of it.
No, I can understand that. And it's like, I get very restless very easily. So I've grown to appreciate that beach holiday, but I certainly can't do it 2 weeks straight, even if you're changing the beaches. And 1 week is already on the limit. Like I'm kind of ready to go after that.
Yeah.
I like it. And then, so if you tell me, depending on the amount of days, I'll take the right city at 5 days over a beach holiday. The interesting thing about city trips is there's two very different kinds of city trips in my mind. There's the totally new city you've never been before, city trip, which especially the first few days can also be quite draining because everything is new. So it's those kind of like, let's say, first 3 days of a trip that you feel like you've been gone 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
There's the going back to a city where you've already done all the touristy stuff, and the pace is totally different. You can just kind of hang, go to visit, bunch of more organize it, depending what you like around the food or stuff like this. You don't need to go take the pictures of all the monuments. And that actually, what I found, ends up being the sweet spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to say, a thought that just occurred to me, which is, who needs tourist stuff? Like, I can't think of one time I went to a city and did the touristy stuff and was like, so glad I did the touristy stuff,
It's usually quite underwhelming.
Absolutely. Like, and no offense to Rome, but like all the top touristy parts there, Colosseum, Forum Romana, you name it. Those were the lowlights of our time in Rome, and the highlights were, of course, the food, like food, drink,
food, the culture, talking to some people. Yeah.
So the more I think of it, I'm like, city trip all the way, and just skip all the tourist stuff. It's the same here in Copenhagen. Like the amount of people who head out to the Little Mermaid only to find it's tragically disappointing.
Here's one for you. What is the bigger disappointment, the Little Mermaid in Copenhagen or the mannequin piss, the little boy peeing in Brussels?
I think the winner here is. The more disappointing is Little Mermaid, because for some reason it actually gets hyped up as being something good, like beautiful or whatever, where it's really, really not. The thing with mannequin piss is anyone who tells you about it, even like the guidebooks and stuff, they already say Europe's most underwhelming statue, or like the most disappointing.
Everyone's in on the joke.
Everyone knows, right? And then you get there and it's actually kind of cool in a weird way. Like I lived in Brussels for a year and would take people by it. Also, it's quite close to Grand Place, so you can just kind of swing
and they
by.
decorate it.
Yeah, all the time. He does a Paddy's Day leprechaun version. He does all sorts. Yeah.
Shout out to Brussels, who when we do the LIP city chaos rankings, will definitely be in contention for the top
I'm holding
spot.
that one back because I've got some thoughts on that. I'm actually heading to Brussels this weekend as well, so I'll be careful not to
good man
ruffle any feathers. Yeah. So
I'll be just about an hour and a half north of you in Rotterdam.
Hey,
yeah,
not too shabby.
Yeah, the second city of the Netherlands.
One of the biggest logistics hubs in the world. How about that?
Absolutely.
Exciting.
I think biggest port in Europe.
I think so.
Bigger than Hamburg,
comfortably,
even.
Actually. The thing is like a city in itself. Yeah.
That's unreal.
Well, there you go. Jeez, that wasn't where we intended to go.
We went slightly off piste, but speaking of pistes, you posed to me the question, city trip or beach trip.
I did.
What if I told you that I would take a mountain trip any day? And I'm talking, let's even it out. So for the summer, I'll take the mountain trip any day over this.
That, I think it puzzles me a bit. And you're not alone. Like, I've heard people talking about this, and particularly in the context of the melting snow that we have now across Europe, where the ski season gets shorter and shorter. These mountain holidays are becoming more of a real thing, actually, where you go not to ski, but to be in the mountain and to do mountainy stuff like hiking or tobogganing or whatever. I don't know.
So I think you need snow to go tobogganing.
Not tobogganing, but those like snow-free toboggans, like they're like a metal track that runs down the mountain.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
You just like sit in it and you crank the...
Yeah, with like wheels on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a summer luge, basically.
Exactly, yeah. But so ski resorts now, who are particularly low in terms of meters above sea level, are having to look into these kind of things now. And that has a bit of an appeal, and I could see it, but I think you're just ahead of the curve here, because personally, that strikes me as similar to a beach holiday, that you're going to be in nature, and nature's great, you're going to be enjoying that, but just tragically not getting input. Like, you're going to be spending each day consuming stuff, I guess, which is going to be books or nature or whatever. But there's not going to be like newness or like novelty to you, which for me I think is key.
Okay, I see where you're going, but keep in mind the versatility of the activities you can do in the mountains in the summer,
well,
right?
hit me,
Because you can hit your little luge thing, right? Which you were mentioning. By the way, we need to get the proper name for that one down. But you can mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
You can hike, of course. I mean, that's the main thing. Mm-hmm. You can climb. I mean, there's so much you can do to not, especially if you're restless. So like me, I love to be active and sporty and in the nature during a holiday. So for me, that's amazing. But then you can be master of productivity. Yeah. You can be very productive with whatever that activity is until a bit after lunchtime, or maybe up until lunchtime. Then have a wonderful lunch in the sun, right? Because you're closer to the sun. And then you can relax and spa in the afternoon, do those types of things. Go to your beloved sauna, for example. And you kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of relaxation and, physical exertion.
And now, is this like at what would be a ski resort in the winter, or is it just anywhere? Okay. So you would go back to where you do actually ski.
I do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I do that.
I think I shouldn't knock it until I try it. It has an appeal, or it's sounding reasonably interesting here. But then again, I'm hesitant, because the city trip is the goat for me, 100%. Like a new city, just throw me in there and I'll be fine. I think
it's where you can experience the most and learn the most, for sure. There I'm totally aligned with you. I mean, also, like, as you know, I'm writing a lot of pieces when I travel, and a big part of that is the people I meet along the way and what I hear from them. Like these first-hand accounts to connect with the local culture. Of course, you're going to get a lot more of that in the city than climbing up a mountain and or lying on a beach with other tourists.
It still comes back to your first point, which is there's two types of holidays, and one of them is about expanding your horizons, and the other is about kind of thinning them, if anything. Just kind of removing distractions and saying it's just me and nature here for the next while. And
that's funny, actually. There's this very interesting phenomenon, and it's not it's not to offend anyone, but it's not really my thing. So last winter, Maria and I, we went off to Lanzarote for 2 months, and we set up shop there, and we worked from there, and then on the weekends we would enjoy the beach, whatever. But a big thing we noticed there is these places are essentially colonies of English people, Irish, German, where even the supermarkets sell the food they have at home. The restaurants are the ones they would have at home. So everything is done in a way to not be bothered by experiencing the local culture at all.
Yeah.
The only variable that changes for them versus home is that the sun is shining stronger.
Literally, yeah.
That's type of holiday. Yeah. I think we can agree that people should move away from that.
True, yeah. Or it's like, what is it you're actually wanting here? Like, what's the product you're buying? And if it's just to be in the sun, then okay, and you're being honest about that, then that's fine. But that's a very expensive way just to warm up a little bit, Yeah. And I think, there's so much more. And then again, it's all about your tolerances and what you like. And
also, comfort zone is a big thing for people.
Indeed. And I'm not going to judge anyone, if someone's about to go off to the same place that they've gone for the last 10 years and they love that and that's cool, then absolutely do it. I'm just saying, for me, for my preference, that would be undoable.
Top city trip?
Tokyo, all the way.
Tokyo?
Yeah.
You can spend 10 years in Tokyo and only see one part of it, right?
100%.
Like 33 million people.
You need to deeply prioritize your time and know what you want to do, but you basically can't go wrong. At least in my experience, any day you spend in Tokyo, you're going to have a brilliant time and you'll never run out of stuff to do, see, eat, drink, whatever.
And that's the thing about those sprawling metropolises is they have so many different faces to them. Yeah. Take even New York, for example, whether you're going in Sunnyside, Queens, or up to Harlem, or into Brooklyn, or downtown Manhattan, it is different cities.
Yeah, 100%.
All within the same, space.
And more going to Manhattan now, it's like you have to get out of Manhattan because it's just so expensive.
Exactly.
Like you have to get to Queens or Brooklyn just to experience more of it.
Yeah.
But geez, we've what a wide-ranging little mundane postulation this has turned out to be. We normally spend something in the region of 8 to 10 minutes. I think we've probably blown through
about
that.
15, yeah. Well, so listeners, there you go. Hopefully that gives you some input for your upcoming spring and summer holidays.
Absolutely. And if nothing else, what I'd be interested to hear from the listener is we've outlined basically 3 types of holidays, which is city, beach, and mountain. Is there another type of holiday? And I'm not saying let's open it up again, but if the listener is going to come back and say, well, actually there is, and it's XYZ. I'd be very interested to hear that.
Let's hear that. And listeners, you can send those in as usual at lostinpostulation@gmail.com. That is our email account. Or you can tweet at us. That's at inpostulation. Now, again, as mentioned last week, for those of you listening on Spotify, we're going to throw out polls and various Q&As at the bottom of each episode for you to interact with us on.
It's almost like Spotify made it for us, purpose-built. It's so perfect for our,
it's unreal.
For our concept.
It's all about the postulations.
It just is, more and more. But there we go. Geez, I guess it's probably time to get into our mainline postulation of the episode.
We've got to.
So let's take a quick break and jump right back in with one of those. And welcome back again, listener, and welcome back to the main postulation of our show, as we like to call it. What we're interested in getting into now in this next section, we had a little bit of trouble at first defining exactly what it was, but we found a nice way to put it together, and that's what I'm going to quickly explain to you now. So we had a number of topics in the realm of TV in particular that we felt were ripe for postulation, ripe for discussion, and we're going to go through them now. But the one theme that happens to draw them all together, and honestly, it's mainly coincidence, is the topic of endings, of things coming to an end. So what you'll notice here as we move through these topics is we're going to be talking about some shows which have ended, some shows which are going to end, some shows which haven't ended but might soon, and some who have, as we'll find later on, maybe lost some of their leading stars along the way. Yeah. But in any case, before we get into that more serious topic, let's start with one that's a bit more current, a bit more lighthearted as well, despite the heavy nature of the show, which is, of course, The Last of Us, which we've loved all the way through.
Yeah, we've loved it all the way through. We're about, a week, 10 days removed from the ending of it. I was getting a bunch of messages, while I was away on my honeymoon. Yeah. First 3 episodes dropped. Hey, you got to watch this. Of course, also from you. Yeah. Then I got into it. I got caught up, I think, with the first 4, and then I was current for the rest. And I think, normally that is not a show I would watch when it's zombie, when it's based on video game. It's just and it's more speaks to me in terms of the personal stigma I had around those things in terms of that content creation. But again, like I said in our Pop Culture Roundup episode 9, blown away by the storytelling.
100%. And for me, I think I was relieved a bit by the ending to see how faithfully it tracked the game, because in many ways it's quite a grim ending. I think like a lot of people were shocked, even having seen the horrors of the series all the way through, they were particularly shocked by just how horrible the ending was. If you remember, there was a lot of like cold-blooded, especially from Joel. Let's
call out just spoiler warning for anybody that hasn't watched and wants to.
If you haven't, I mean, you're really missing out. Get on there, get on HBO. It was fantastic, I think, all the way through. We discussed a little bit in the prep here, when exactly did it peak? And I distinctly remember, I think I might have said it on the show or else I said it offline, after episode 3, I loved episode 3 and thought it was phenomenal. Emmy's in the bag for all involved. And also had a bit of a reservation, which was, where does the show go from here? Can it maintain this pace? Because for me, 3 was just a standalone masterpiece and couldn't really see how, by following the beats of the game, it would be able to command that same level of excellence all the way through. And I have to say now, in hindsight, with it sitting in the rearview mirror a bit, I can say, yeah, it didn't really go beyond episode 3 for me.
Okay, so you draw the line at 3. For me, I think it is an earlier peak, and it's not a fully crescendo season of TV. But for me, it was this episodes 1 through 5 was probably one of the best runs in terms of pace in the history of HBO, any show. So, for me, that's like, I look at those 5, which could be a standalone miniseries in themselves, and you could end there at the end of episode 5, the end of Kansas City, and actually call that a season of television, which could, with just those 5, go down as one of the best ever.
And that reminds me a bit of Chernobyl, because we're talking about Craig Mazin, right? Who's involved with both. Wasn't Chernobyl something like 5 episodes or 6 or something like that? Yeah,
it was a miniseries, definitely. 5, 6... Yeah, definitely not more than 6.
It's that really, like, that was a series that did not overstay its welcome whatsoever. Every episode was crucial. Everything had kind of weight to it.
Yeah.
There were some episodes of The Last of Us where you definitely came away thinking, all right, this was a filler episode, you know?
Yeah. For me, it's 2 seasons in one, and I found myself watching those. This might also be because I was able to binge the first 4 to get caught up, right?
Yeah.
So that might be a bit of bias there. But I found myself on the final 4 episodes not as engaged.
Yeah.
Maybe reaching for my phone, even cardinal sin a couple times. Whereas with the other ones, I was full on. I was feeling things. It was an incredibly physical experience to watch. Now, those final 4 still better than 9 out of 10 shows in any given moment. Don't get me wrong. But I definitely think we peaked at 5.
Yeah, I think it's between 3 and 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
But interesting about the dual screening on the phone thing, because I was the exact same. I had like a bad problem towards the end of kind of listening in the background and listening to see if the characters were up to much, and then if so, I would look up, right? Yeah. But I do think that it sounds like that's a failing on my part, but I do think it's a bit of failing of the show as well.
Well, if we both did it.
Yeah, and I think especially in episodes like 6, 7, 8, its treatment of your time was very relaxed, I found. And that's a bit rich coming from a podcast that is about postulating.
Hour long.
Yeah. But I think seriously, the urgency with which it was progressing was sometimes crazy breakneck. And sometimes it was like, yeah, so now we're going to spend 10 minutes with this campfire and just let the characters chill there for a while. So I didn't necessarily feel like my attention was needed all the time, because I was like, well, you let me know, show, when you're back on track, because it seems like you're just chilling right now.
It felt kind of like pulling the handbrake a bit of like, oh, we've gone too fast the first 5. It felt kind of like if you have like a young athlete that, you know, just bursts onto the scene, has a great, you know, first 3 years of their career, breaking all the records, and then they kind of say, slow it down a bit. We want you to get to age 40. And the guy's like, well, I'm just hitting my prime earlier. Like, put me on the field. And they're like, no. Just, you know, go on the bench. Now it's time to pay your dues after he's kind of already proven himself. Yeah. So it'd be like Mr. Pep Guardiola putting Erling Braut Haaland on the bench now, just saying, you've gone too fast.
And wouldn't that be classic Pep? But in any case, I think we're in for a treat with season 2, and knowing again what's coming, it'll be fantastic. It'll be more of the same, or if not better. I'm unhappy about the wait that's coming. We have to wait about a year and a half until season 2. I think it was
easily 12 months. Right?
I think it was end 24 that it'll be ready. And sometimes shows can come like 1 year at a time, go. When they've been greenlit for more than one season, the issue here is that until the first episode aired, they actually hadn't greenlit the second season. They wanted to actually see the audience reaction, not just the finished product, but how people reacted to it. And mainstream success is obvious. But yeah. So we will get it, and it'll start Bella Ramsey again and Pedro Pascal, but it'll just take another 2 years to be made.
N24 is what they're targeting now.
I think and after delays and what have you, after another pandemic, who knows? We could be talking early 25, who knows? But so what I've decided basically is that I'll put it to the back of my mind. I'll maybe play through the game again, you know, get my enjoyment of the story that way, but I'm not going to hold my breath for season 2 anytime soon.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's The Last of Us, and now you can all get caught up and rewatch as much as you want, because apparently you're gonna have to wait 2 years to see the next season.
Yeah, you can dive right back in full depth, or go play the games, because those are, especially the second one, a 25-hour, 26-hour experience we're talking here, where the emotional moments are more peppered through an action game rather than just given to you one after the other, which is what the series was. Right. So I, again, one more time, have to recommend the games. Really, really good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What do you play that on?
That was on the PlayStation.
The PlayStation.
The PS4 or PS5. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're exclusive, actually. Or at least the first one is just coming out on PC now. But up until recently, they were fully PlayStation exclusive. Yeah.
Okay. Look at that. All right. Great. So from one HBO series, The Last of Us, we go to another.
Yeah.
Which you may say, that's not an ending, because it's actually starting up again in a few days. So next Sunday, Succession Season 4 will be officially the last season of Succession.
That news, when we heard that, was the most reassuring piece of news we could have heard about how good this season will or won't be. We talked a lot, for the loyal listener who will know, we talked a lot in our predictions episode that we, and particularly you, weren't actually too bullish on Succession being a great season coming up. And there was even, I think, a trailer around that time, if not soon after, which was also a little bit concerning, or it didn't quite strike many of the usual beats that it is so easily does. Usually, I think we've both had a change of view since then, but what's your latest take?
So my latest take is, so my original prediction was we're just stringing this thing along too much, and we've probably gone a season too long. And I think we both kind of agreed but before any rumors were there, that this could be the last season of Succession, for better or worse. Then Jesse Armstrong gave his interview to the New Yorker. He called it. They're ending on a high, and that kind of led me to, okay, if they know it's the last season, they're going to pull out all the stops to keep us all engaged, and we're all going to be super engaged regardless because of it being the last season. That kind of got me to rethink that we could be in for quite a treat. And on top of that, I love when this happens. I love when somebody absolutely kills it and then they decide they end on top, right?
100%. It's actually increasingly rare these days. There's very few franchises I can point to where I can say not only did they finish, in good time, they finished well ahead of any degradation of quality. I think most seasons, even the top classics, and we've mentioned The Wire many times, but same with The West Wing, same with all those heavy hitters, inevitably the later seasons are the ones that start to suffer. So for me, Succession is quite a reassuring one, because up until now, seasons 1, 2, 3, it's always felt like a statement piece from Jesse Armstrong, where he's doing it not for the money, not because it's popular, because he has something that he actually wants to say with it. And him deciding to end it now when he does is actually very reassuring to me, because it tells me that he has found something to say with this season. And it is also his concluding statement for the piece, for Succession. It ends the arc of the whole show. So I'm super excited, actually.
Yeah.
And what brilliant timing. We just talked about The Last of Us, but like HBO with a scheduling miracle on their hands, where just when people are considering cancelling after finishing The Last of Us, they reel you back in with Succession. It's amazing.
They've just hit the nail on the head in so many different ways. HBO. I mean, we love HBO. We've sung their praises so much on the show, as the loyal listeners will know, that it's really amazing. What they're
phenomenal
doing.
Stuff. But we had some thoughts on the upcoming season back in December when we recorded our predictions episode, and I had one in particular that I'm happy to start by throwing out again, just to see how it lands a few months removed from that. I had the postulation that this was going to be Greg's season.
Cousin
Greg was going to, as he did at the end of the last season, sold his soul, partnered up with the devil. And I thought, it's going to be Greg centered. Now, I actually am going to take that back. I'm going to overturn that prediction, because I've now watched the trailers and he doesn't really feature too heavily. And I feel like if there was a masterstroke coming where he had some very pivotal role to play, they would at least reference it somehow. They would show, hey, remember this guy? Remember what he did at the end of the last season? I think they might have actually gone in a completely different direction, and I don't know if Greg will even feature that heavily anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just from the trailers, because it's the siblings are in it like 80% of the time, and then you get the classics, you get Skarsgård, you get kind of some of the more...
Is Skarsgård back?
Yeah, he's in. Yeah,
Skarsgård Jr.
Confirmed. Yeah.
Do we get Adrian Brody back?
If we do, he's only for like a second in the trailer, maybe. But he didn't leave an impression on me. But Skarsgård is going to be the actual main antagonist, I think, of the season.
Okay. I didn't really like him too much in it last season. I don't really rate him as an actor. I would have loved to had him and Adrian Brody been flipped, and we got a lot more screen time with Adrian.
True. And I mean, it's now a trope, isn't it? The evil tech bro thing we talked about, where, between Knives Out and all the other films, even Social Network, when that was made, this thing of like the tech bro as a villain is now becoming almost a bit trite or a bit overplayed. It's for our generation as cliche laden as the investment banker was for the Gordon Gekko generation. Indeed. So I think not a huge fan if they lean on that one too heavily. Then again, he knows what he's doing, Jesse Armstrong. He doesn't need our input on it. But you had a few thoughts as well, Nicola, on what or more accurately, who are going to come out on top.
Yeah. But back to you in terms of landing the plane on that. If it's not going to be cousin Greg,
well, who? Yeah,
who will make it?
I think there is what we all want as an audience is for Logan to get his comeuppance, right? But I think Jesse's kind of key point that he's going to land is that in this world, in this multi-billionaire world, there are no good guys and bad guys. There's power and there's winning and there's losing. And Logan wins. He does not lose. So I think we're going to be strung along through the whole season, and we think the siblings are going to finally get something done or take over the company. The show is called Succession, so it's about who's going to take over the company. And I think somehow, one way or another, Logan will just decide, actually, I would rather self-destruct this company than give it.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's
Yeah.
that's my top of the head
I
postulation.
think that's the one, and I think anything short of that would be a bit of a lazy off ramp to actually have, let's say, one of the kids getting the succession. So I think Logan, but I'm gonna throw this out there for you, together with Tom, who already kind of won the last season.
Yeah.
They're just gonna make this odd couple that runs the show.
Tom is such an interesting one. I think hoping we see even more of him this season. He's been such a great character in the last couple of seasons.
And great actor.
Yeah.
And
British accent.
British,
always
accent.
big respect for those convincing American actors or accents, I should say.
Yeah.
But so we both feel Logan.
I think we both feel Logan in terms of the character. But now, if we look at the whole arch of Succession, who do you think has won career-wise? Real people now. Who comes out shooting star for the next years? Who's set up for compounded success after this, right? So not who peaked at Succession, because I think we'll probably have plenty of those, because this is an all-time pantheon show, and we'll probably get to ranking it in that pantheon.
Very tough, because the first person who comes to mind, Kieran Culkin, is actually more than likely the point you just mentioned, someone who peaked,
Right.
because I can't see him being cast in anything else. A bit like the Christoph Waltz discussion, he is playing a very amped up version of himself in Succession, and it's phenomenal. And he's even his improvising is great, because he's improvising around himself, right? And I've seen him also in at least a couple of other things. Obviously, Home Alone, when he was a young child, but also Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He shows up in that for quite a bit.
He was in Home Alone as
one of the little brothers.
One of the little brothers, and yeah, that's true.
You see him most notably drinking Coke or eating pizza in the opening scenes. You know, he's not up to much in the movie, but he was also like 6 or 7. So I'm not going to hold that against him. But he was also in Scott Pilgrim as an adult. You know,
right,
where he was also playing basically Kieran Culkin. So maybe this is an unfair accusation that I level at too many actors, but at the same time, I think he's going to struggle to find something to really pull him far away from that niche that he's now known for, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
I also was going to say on this, in the same breath, that Jeremy Strong may have actually done more of a disservice to his career here. And the main reason for that is he's built up a terrible reputation over the last few seasons of Succession for being someone who takes it a little bit too seriously.
He hasn't had great PR, that's for sure.
Almost, and he does it to himself, because he's like, there's long articles that have been written about him with his agreement, you know, where
the
he's
New
been
Yorker
interviewed.
profile
That's
last
the
year.
one. Yeah, that's what I'm referencing, where he, as much as anyone, it does a great job of just sullying his own name, basically, where he's like, yeah, so what I like to do is I sit for 3 hours in the trailer and then I do my scene. You know, like, he's incredibly intense. And of course, that has led to some great performances. But were I a casting director or a director or whatever, which I'm for sure never going to be, but you know, let's just postulate here, I would definitely think twice about pulling someone like that in, because he sounds like an absolute handful and just not a team player at all, not somebody who's
Brian
here to...
Cox has said as much.
Yeah. Now, Brian Cox, I mean, he can hardly go much higher, but he's someone who has done nothing but a service to his career. But those were my thoughts. I struggled to pick out somebody particularly on the rise, funny enough. But what about you?
So on Jeremy Strong, I agree with you. I don't know if the acting chops are there. And I don't say this because of Succession, but I recently watched him in this film called Armageddon Time, which came out last year. And it just seems like, yes, he gets very much into roles, but to this borderline overacting, where it's like you almost feel while you're watching the film, man, you might be trying too hard.
Yeah, kind of cringe almost. Yeah.
Kind of cringe almost. And it's one thing to cringe in Succession, because Succession is all about the cringe, right? But I don't really think that carries over too much. So I don't know if he's going to be, for sure he'll be around the next 20 years in Hollywood, whatever. But will he be a leading man in motion pictures?
No.
I don't think so.
I think he'll have the same trajectory as like Jesse Eisenberg, kind of, you know, like great asshole character, has his zenith as an asshole, you know, plays in the case of Eisenberg playing Mark Zuckerberg phenomenally.
Yeah, doing a lot of Woody Allen.
Yeah, but then what has he really done acting wise? You know, even has he ever played a nice guy ever in any film, Jesse Eisenberg? And I think it'll be the same with Jeremy Strong, unfortunately.
You can get pigeonholed quite easily. So you actually have to be the best of the best to avoid the pigeonhole and have versatility and range, right? I don't necessarily think he's there. I think Brian Cox, this is probably his curtain call.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it'll be the biggest thing he ever does, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he was a well-respected actor, but borderline B-lister. Probably some of our, listeners from the British Isles will come for me on that one.
That would be sacrilege, I think, to a few people, but yeah.
To the Scots especially.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to get the Scots angry.
No,
so
they're angry enough as it is. Yeah.
in general. So, look, I think, genuinely, because most of us didn't really know her until Succession. Sarah Snook, who plays Shiv Roy.
Yeah.
I've also seen her in a couple of films she's done in between the seasons of Succession, such as she has a small role in Pieces of a Marriage with what is her name? Amanda Kirby. And I really think she has the potential and the range to go forward. Also, they're Australian actress, also pulling off the American accent.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
She is one of the strongest, I think, performers on the show, and has, I think, such a canniness and such an intelligence to how she's one of those actresses that like says so much through just her facial expression, through a slight glance or look or whatever. The ending of the last season, where she realizes everything that's just happened with Tom, is all done non-verbally. The camera stays on her and you see her go through the oh my god, and she just portrays it amazingly. So I think that takes some serious skills, and I think she's one of the best from the show. I actually haven't seen her in anything else though, so I'm hoping I get a chance to see her do something totally opposite, just like take on a new character, new kind of vibe, new kind of performance. That'd be
and now she should have the time to do it, right? So
you would think, and hopefully the phone should be ringing off the hook. She's
I would think so. And exactly, it gets to this point which you and I always discuss about, she makes me feel something, even though oftentimes I really don't like her character, especially in season 3, where they really made her to be very unlikable. She makes me feel something constantly, whereas Kieran Culkin, he'll make me laugh. It's great relief, but I'm not coming away feeling any very strong emotions toward him.
I think that's fair. I think she's probably, as we've landed here, she's probably the one with the highest potential to go on to even greater things. Best Actress awards in her future, I'm sure, if not very soon.
Yeah, great stock to buy. Now, while we're on Succession, before we end on it, we talk about this being, one of the best shows that have been on HBO, where we know there have been a multitude of other amazing shows. Do you put this up on that pantheon, or let's say that Mount Rushmore, with what we take for granted are at least The Sopranos and The Wire?
I can't say that yet, is the quick answer, because
let it age.
Well, no, not even that. I need to see how they stick the landing, because the shows that I rank on the top ever, Sopranos, The Wire, even The West Wing a little bit, still has a warm spot in my heart.
That's my third one. So
if you go back and pick any one episode of The West Wing and you show it to someone who hasn't seen it, you will find yourself saying, no, actually it's really good though. It is really good. Sometimes you do, like it trips over its own intellect sometimes, but still I rank it up there. And because the arc that those shows took, and in the same breath, I will excuse the last 2 series of The West Wing, which I felt were, a little bit.
And it wasn't Sorkin anymore, right?
Exactly. So let's call it like the Sorkin West Wing, and then The Wire, and then The Sopranos. Actually, Breaking Bad I would put up there too, because of the arc, always because of the arc, because how they managed to take a story from episode 1 and land it beautifully, even knowing, as I do now, that, for example, Breaking Bad, they hadn't a clue how it was going to end. They didn't even know how the current season was going to end sometimes.
Is that right?
Yeah, when they started filming, it was all about just finding some thread. Like, for example, in season 2 of Breaking Bad, there's an opening shot of a teddy in a swimming pool, right? And it's mysterious, and each episode opens with it, and they didn't know what it meant either when they were filming.
Oh my god!
They only found out halfway through the season. They were like, "Oh, it's from the plane that crashes when the and they just picked it and were like, they just go all in, and they picked it as like, this will be a motif, it'll mean something, and we'll find out as we go.
Wow.
So anyway, all that to say, Succession needs to stick the landing, and what I need to be able to do is look back at season 1, 2, 3, 4 as this like arc thing, and be able to describe what is the writer director saying with the piece, like what, and how has he planned that out over a long series. So I'm basically saying TBC. Let me come back to me in 10 weeks or whatever it is.
Hypothetically, if he sticks the landing,
absolutely,
you talk about it within those.
I think so.
Shows.
It's just insanely compelling. Like you start it and you're like, I don't get this, I don't like it, and then suddenly you're like, I need to watch every episode of this in the shortest amount of time possible. It's just so fascinating and has so much to say. It's so contemporary, so modern, has a lot to talk about, that I think it's just fantastic.
And demands rewatches. I know quite a few people that in the lead up to a new Succession season coming out, go back and rewatch the previous seasons in depth.
If I had
just
time,
binge through them.
Had I time, I would probably go and do it, other than having just spent all my time watching The Last of Us. You know?
Right,
so
exactly.
I'm like just ready to go with this new season. But yeah, it is super rewatchable, and a lot of it's quite dense. Like the script is very wordy. There's a lot of details to pick up on. So I think repeat watches actually lend itself well to it. But just really hope he lands where I hope it lands.
Yeah, there you go. And in light of that, actually, I know you haven't been watching it, but last week, the first episode of Ted Lasso, season 3 dropped, which is widely rumored to be the final season of Ted Lasso as well. Yeah. Very different type of show in terms of, if you say, Succession is much more taking a cynical view of things. Ted Lasso is all about the positivity. It's almost as feel good of a show as you can have, but with the right level of depth.
Cool.
So I've really enjoyed that. And that's been on Apple TV Plus. And there's Apple TV Plus, I feel like, also because it seems they're not constrained by a budget nor really care, has been able to just run these huge budget shows with all top, Hollywood A-listers for these past 3 years and just getting more and more. It's crazy.
But Apple TV Plus, isn't Ted Lasso kind of their crown jewel right now?
And that's the interesting thing. Yeah. Like, that's been the one that has been the biggest hit, but I think because it's also the most broad-based. But there's been so much great stuff, even like miniseries like We Crashed in the last year.
Yeah, but this is the problem, right? I was just reflecting here, like, why have I missed Ted Lasso? Like, why have I just dodged every bullet of Ted Lasso that has come my way over the years, right? And the reason basically is that I never got Apple TV Plus. But you have been, I think, the biggest proponent of Apple TV Plus. You've been saying this great stuff on it, you need to get it. But I have to say, out in the world, out in work, in meeting people randomly, nobody really talks about Apple TV Plus, or at least it's very low on the list, right? It comes after Disney Plus, even to me. No. People talk about Netflix, you got to watch this, you got to watch that. But I feel like I haven't seen enough to pull me towards Apple TV Plus yet, and therefore not Ted Lasso.
I'll put it this way. Because, and probably part of it is relative to the fact that I originally had low expectations for Apple TV Plus, but we take for granted that we need to have Netflix.
Yeah, 100%.
I would cut Netflix for Apple TV Plus right now. No joke.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember something I saw on Netflix that was actually good recently.
Like, honestly, in the last month, I cannot think of a single thing that Maria and I watched on Netflix.
I'm struggling here. Yeah.
And then when there is something, it's like a little documentary about an athlete or something that I queue up while I'm on a plane.
And like they always have some kind of marquee thing that they're pushing hard. There was the Edgar Allan Poe thing, actually, reference back to episode 1 there. But there was
with
the
Christian
Edgar Allan
Bale,
Poe,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where it got amazing publicity. It was being plastered all over Netflix. But as soon as you Google it and you look at the IMDb score and it's like 5.5 or that's all I need. I'm like, okay, I'm absolutely not watching it. Another crap Netflix show. So,
and a few months before that, it was the same thing with that Ryan Gosling movie, that action movie, which was plastered on every city bus all over the world.
Exactly.
Did the same thing you did. Looked it up, and I was like, no chance.
Yeah,
I'd rather rewatch Sopranos on HBO.
Yeah, because there's plenty else out there, So it actually takes quite a lot. It takes some serious reviews for us to actually press play.
Yeah.
And it takes even more for us to stick with it because we have to also then like it,
Yeah, and here we are, both still having Netflix. I mean,
why do I still have
forever?
Netflix? Yeah.
Because it was the first one, and I think we feel we would lose something, and even the catalog, to be honest with you, it's not like just going into the back catalog of films. Now that the others are claiming back their original content, isn't that good anymore.
It's vanishingly small, yeah. And then each month I see like, oh, catch it now before it goes. And I'm like, why is it going? Jeez, like this is just panicking me more, Yeah. I watched a few things just before they left. I think Requiem for a Dream was being taken off in January, so I had to watch it then, But like,
that moved to HBO now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I caught it just in time. But and then again, the reason I'm still watching it actually is Drive to Survive, I just remembered. So the Formula One documentary.
So you need 1 week a year.
Basically, yeah. Because as soon as that ends, and the only other thing I would miss is the Hayao Miyazaki movies, the Studio Ghibli Japanese films, which are only on Netflix and very hard to find otherwise. And you just can't see them any other way. So I would miss the opportunity to go back and rewatch some of those. Those are fantastic. But other than that, I'm like, I would be fine,
I think there's something there also of, is part of what we really enjoy with these drops from HBO, or in my case also Apple TV Plus, that it in a way you go back to having the one episode a week, which then you can go in depth on and discuss, whereas Netflix, it's like 10 episodes right away. Actually, that's the last thing we watched on Netflix. I think it was in the autumn, was the new season of The Crown. That's that's like a quarter ago.
Yeah.
But what I didn't like about that was that it dropped 10 episodes right away, and we basically binged it in a weekend.
What's up? Why do you think Netflix are doing that intentionally? Like, they must have some data to support.
Well, that was what they kind of revolutionized in a way the industry with. It was all about the binging. There may be psychological aspect where if you binge something super quick on there, you're gonna look for the next thing to binge in the same place.
Yeah, didn't they declare war on sleep or something like that recently? They basically said Netflix wants to be in front of your eyes as much as possible at the expense of everything else, including sleep.
Yeah.
Like, they want you to be binging all the way through into bedtime. You know,
Reed Hastings said their number one competitor is sleep.
Yeah, you were saying
that's dark, man.
Yeah. But it's crazy though, because as you say, you lose the marquee-ness of it each week, where we've been coming into work every Monday or Tuesday and being like, hey, who saw The Last of Us, you know?
Right.
Whereas when Drive to Survive came out, I've been checking in with people saying, hey, have you watched it yet? And some people are like, yeah, I'm on like the one about Magnuson, or I finished the one about this and that. But you don't have a touch point where you can both say, hey, did you see that moment last night? You know? So I think as much as I enjoyed it early on, like when House of Cards was coming out and it just dropped season 1 and it was immense.
The original,
and amazing.
actually.
Yeah. That was cool when it was just like out of nowhere and amazing. But now when it's like, okay, the whole new season's here, it's dropped, you know? You're just like, okay, should I watch it all now? Or, you know, like I have trouble kind of pacing it myself even. And I don't know. I think I actually...
Give me some structure.
Yeah, I actually prefer the HBO thing right now, which is like, here you go, here's your one episode. I know many people are complaining about that too, but all the same, I think it's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've touched upon, Ted Lasso, which is a show about football in on this side of the Atlantic, or soccer on the other side of the Atlantic. There's something that you and I haven't discussed in a while, because it's been a sore point, you know.
It's been like interchanging who's annoyed about it at any given time.
And that is FPL, Fantasy Premier League, which it's your debut season. And last I checked, I think you have a 9-point lead on me at the moment.
Scraping by this week, which is a rough one.
And that's also coming to an end, you know, in the next 2 months. So
it is.
How do you feel?
I, broadly speaking, am delighted with having taken part, because I still don't watch football. Like, I literally, I made the joke to my brothers when I saw them last, that like the names on my team, if you put their faces in front of me, I literally don't know who's who.
You can't even match them.
I can't name the players, or I can't put a face to the name. I just know that they're really good with points. Like, I'm like, Martinelli, you gotta have him. I don't know what the guy looks like. And then, of course, I'm following the discussions online and the trends, whatever. But this is what I love. Like, playing a game like that, where it's all about good decision-making, data with a bit of gut feeling, bit of luck involved. Long-term planning is rewarded very well in FPL. So, like, it's been super fun. And I'm almost sad that it's ending. I'm going to miss it when it's over. It's been replaced a bit by Fantasy Formula 1, but this year that thing is an absolute disaster.
Right.
Leave it. I'm super annoyed with it.
And not as many levers and as much jeopardy.
Especially because they messed up the pricing. So Aston Martin and Alonso and Stroll are too cheap, so everyone has them, and they're so it you can't really win anyway.
Right.
Like, you all just have to have the same team, so it's really boring. But FPL, not at all. It's like fantastic pricing structure that changes constantly, and just a lot of variables, hundreds of players. So it's just fantastic. So I'm loving it, despite not watching football and not really caring much about football at all.
Yeah. It's listeners, you can imagine my frustration at the fact that I actually watch a lot of Premier League, and I'm points behind Neil, and it's not my debut season, and it could even if I lose to Neil, end up being one of my best season point tallies ever.
Sorry about that.
And then you'll listen to some of these FPL podcasts, and they'll say, all the data you want, but you gotta have the eye test. You gotta catch a bit of the match, or at least the highlights. Neil is defying everything. He is part of this new breed that plays the fantasy game of a sport he doesn't even care about.
You don't need to watch it. It's literally a numbers game. They might as well be called like random inanimate objects. Like it would still be an interesting game for me, you know.
It's unbelievable. I like chapeau to you. Well, I hope to still beat you, and then that's it. I am flabbergasted by this trend.
I think get used to it. Don't get used to losing to me, but get used to fantasy sports occupying more and more of your brain, because I really think these things are here to stay.
Yeah.
And the better the game is designed, like FPL now has 10 years of history, so it's really sharp, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know for the Formula One one is quite bad right now, but fantasy tennis, fantasy golf, like bring it on. I'm ready to go. I would happily play those too. All they need is some competent developers and designers to actually make the thing compelling, have the server capacity to make it work well, you know? And I think you'll just attract more and more and more people.
Yeah. And it's go ahead.
I was going to say, just maybe I will start watching football. If it does give me an edge in it, it might draw me in.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's unbelievable. And it's funny you say that, because actually we used to play a lot of fantasy NFL when I was in high school in the US. I actually spend more time on fantasy FPL now than I did as a high school student who had nothing better to do.
And yes, yeah. And you found, yeah. But no, it's insane. But like, it can be all encompassing. There's so much content creators out there. I'm glad we didn't, when we were deciding to start a podcast, I'm glad we didn't decide to be an FPL podcast, because I think that is like an uphill battle right now. There's just so many out there.
They're good, those guys. Like they're
absolutely. Oh, I'm enjoying
you're
them.
better apparently, but
the only downside is that it kind of funnels everyone towards the same basic team, right? That we've all got the template now, as it's called, and we differentiate only on 2 or 3 players, and that's kind of boring as well, but it's still fun. I like it.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. We've covered endings on TV and ended up talking about FPL. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to come back with one final parting shot. Welcome back, listeners. We wanted to end this episode. We got the news just less than a week before the release of this, that Lance Reddick sadly passed away at the age of 60 only. Lance Reddick, who any Wire fans will know as Lieutenant Cedric Daniels, who then, goes all the way up to becoming Commissioner Cedric Daniels. And he's actually, after Al Brown 2 months ago, who played Valchik, and, Michael K. Williams, who played Omar, passing away 2 years ago. We're losing a lot of this. The Wirecast, Neil and I have been huge fans of the show, and we just wanted to pay our respects to Cedric Daniels here, to Lance Reddick.
Yeah, I think as what we're quickly becoming like a part-time Wire podcast, basically, it would only be right, I think, to check in. But also, I think, at least for me, and I think for you as well, this was a character who kind of went beyond a bit the average. Like he was someone who stuck in your mind, not just because he was a compelling character, but also because he was just so brilliantly portrayed and so memorable. He's one of the few that I think anyone who's watched the show will instantly remember when we talk about Lieutenant Daniels,
Absolutely.
He now this is slightly cringe on my part. I'm just going to put it out there regardless. Particularly for me, when I started watching The Wire, it would have been years and years before I really started my professional career or anything like that. But he would have been an example of someone whose leadership and whose management genuinely I was looking to and thinking like, holy F, that is like how you do it, right? He leads the team, especially in season 1, in such a way, and now I'm really commending the writing more than the acting, but still I think there was something Lance added to it here, where it combines this level of incredible standards that he holds everyone to, and massively driven by values above all else, while still being a nice guy, by like treating everyone with respect, and so basically I think it kind of stuck with me. And as I said, I'm flagging this is massively cringe. I don't mean to I'm not trying to say that it's very, very cool what I'm talking about here, but I do think it's one of those things where it stuck with me beyond just a show, beyond just an actor. It was like a character who really stuck with me and resonated with me. So definitely wanted to reference and give a final shout out to Lance for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said really resonates with Lance Reddick, with Cedric Daniels in the case of The Wire. It was really all about the leadership style, right? And having this balance between the interchange of loyalty, demanding it and giving it, but at the same time having those values and challenging anybody that would step closer onto them. And I think what that did was it got him the respect of this ragtag bunch, which he inherits in the first season, right? And what allowed him to make a career without actually having to compromise too much on his own principles.
Yeah, and I mean, no spoilers. I suppose it's a bit late now to
it's only 20 years.
Exactly. So I don't feel bad for spoiling anything, but it's ultimately his values that lead to his end or his downfall, right? So, or at least his leaving of his role and leaving behind what he's done. So I just think it's a beautifully written character all the way through. It has a great arc, as we talked about earlier. But I have to say, it would all be for nothing if it wasn't for the acting, for the work that Lance Reddick did, bringing that character to life, making it believably stoic, believably unique in some ways. And also then you believe things like his marriage falling apart. It fits with this character because it's fully formed. The character is multifaceted like he is, or was, I suppose. So it's a real shame, I think. And it's also a shame that we didn't see more from him throughout his career. I think we talked just before now, we talked about how he played a big role in the Destiny games, Destiny 2 in particular. There's been
John Wick movies.
Yeah, there's a few niche kind of areas where he's really shone and garnered a lot of support actually in the background here. And again, I haven't experienced much of those either. Suffice to say, basically, I wish I saw more of him out there, whether it was in games or movies or TV or what have you. Absolutely. So big loss, thoughts to the whole family, and pour some out. Rest in peace, Lance Reddick. Thanks for everything. He was good police.
Natural police. We'll leave you with that, listeners, and see you next week.